Right. Hello and welcome everybody. We're gonna give a couple more minutes for people to join. In the meantime, I've opened up Q&A, so feel free to chime in there. We'll use this as a little bit of discussion to kick things off. Tell us where you're joining from and what apps you work on. All right. All right, everyone. Cool. Hey, Nicholas, welcome. Joining from Atlanta. Working on Craver. Very cool. Working on an app to community source. Very awesome. Cool. If you just joined, please feel free to use the Q&A of Zoom to tell us where you're joining from and what app or apps you're working on. We'll give a couple more minutes for people to join and then we'll kick things off. All right, everyone. We'll start moving through things. There's a bunch that we got to update you on that's happened during this last year, all the growth trends that we want to cover, and what's ahead coming up on the roadmap. We're gonna do some live demo during this time. Fingers crossed, everything works smoothly on my end with managing Zoom, but we'll get through it. Um, like I said, if you've just joined, please feel free to use the Q&A of Zoom to tell us where you're joining from and what app or apps you're working on. We'll kick things off. Cool. So I'm your host. I'm Superwall's app growth expert. I work on the product side and customer success. And I'm joined by my counterpart, Jordan, who's our developer advocate. He'll be managing the Q&A. So as we go through the webinar today, feel free to ask your questions, get them answered, and as we go through each stage of this webinar, you might have questions along the way about how things work. So Jordan's going to surface those and so we can answer them on the spot. And then any other general questions we'll save for the end, but feel free to ask whatever you want. Cool. All right. So here's what we're going to talk about. One, 2025 conversion trends, what worked, what didn't. We're going to talk about product updates that we've shipped during last year. There's a lot that we shipped, a ton that we shipped. And the more we ship, the harder it is to know exactly what happened, or you might have missed some features along the way. So we're going to talk through some of the nuances of specific features that we've added. And then we're going to preview what's coming up in Q1, Q2 on our roadmap and what you can expect, and then handle some Q&A after. So with that, what happened this year during the mobile world? Uh, yeah, a lot. In April, there was the US court ruling that opened up uh, a, against Apple that opens up tons of options for new ways to use third-party purchase methods. We've seen a lot of experimentation this year. Um, so that happened, that was big, and since then it's caused a whole new wave of ways to acquire customers. In September, iOS 26 was released. Shout out to Jordan, who shipped this Swift UI backports, made it super easy to ensure that all your UIs can still use liquid glass, but also for any previous versions like iOS 18 and older, that you can still use your old UIs that work really flexibly. And then in October, there was a similar court ruling with Google as the Apple had, that opens up other purchase methods to be used. So a lot happened. This is besides all the other stuff of different trends of growth, UGC, user acquisition, and other things that happened during the year. If you haven't already seen it, like UGC has become like the major trend for acquiring customers this year. And so much so that some of the platforms have needed to update their algorithms. And Jordan, I'm sure if I don't mention this, you're gonna ding me for it. Uh, AI changed a lot this year. It feels like every 2 weeks there's a new model. Um, I think everyone on our team, and I'm sure everyone that on this webinar has tried AI in some way, shape, or form. We've got a couple new things that we have shipped in Superwall this year that use AI that are really awesome. We're going to talk about. Um, but in particular, it's changed the way that we develop. And so many developers are now coming online who and shipping apps who have never actually been a software developer in the past and are now shipping fully functional apps. It's been awesome. Cool. All right. So let's talk about conversion trends from this year. There's been a lot in what we've seen. I personally ship over 200 experiments a year with customers. There's a lot that's gone on that we want to highlight, the specific things that tend to work really well. But in particular, the first one is devs have doubled down on this multi-page format. We've seen a bunch of new variations of this, but the multi-page format works incredibly well. It continues to drive, excuse me, continues to drive conversion gains, and we see time and time again that this wins out. So if you haven't already tried this, we have a whole webinar and a blog post that Jordan's created on this format. Another one I'm going to talk about in a second, but multi-page is awesome. We have a bunch of templates for you that you can use this with. More purchase page design variations, along with multi-page and single page format. Um, a lot heavier focus on testimonials and some other types of social proof on purchase pages, and getting away from the standard 3 bullet point list of what features are included. Number two, app to web. Early adopters saw some revenue gains. In particular, trying different ways to use app to web in their flow. Maybe you use it for transaction abandonment, maybe use it only on certain products, like this example. But app to web became a trend that early adopters are seeing some pretty awesome gains that are uh, creating whole new ways for them to acquire customers, which has been awesome. Third trend, designer trial paywalls are winning in nearly every experiment that I run with customers. We've got a whole bunch of templates on for this format. And again, we did a whole webinar on this. There's lots of content that we have, but this format works particularly well where you give users an option over a 3 or 7 day trial versus a 30-day paid trial. And the decision that the user makes in their mind is not, do I want monthly or yearly, do I want this or not? It's they have control over something that they've never had control over before in most apps. So it works really well to convert users. All right, cool. And then personalization became a big trend this year with customers I work with, not just with trying to look at something like, is this user more likely to pay more if they're on a higher end device, but also other things, other ways to segment users in their onboarding, other signals that you might have. I've gone pretty deep with customers in analyzing what their customers are willing to pay versus the kinds of things that they select during onboarding, the kind of choices that they make. So there's lots of ways to personalize um, your pricing, and not just on what prices you show, but also what you set the default prices to or default tier to if you have multiple subscription tiers in your app. So lots of ways to do this. But pricing personalization became a bigger topic throughout the year, starting right around like summertime and has carried through to the end of this year. All right. Before we carry on, any questions about growth trends that we've seen this year? We've got lots of content for you on our blog. Um, but anyone have any questions? All right, Nick, you got a hand raised. Feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A section. We'll answer this for you. All right. Any early results on web checkout sheets? Yes. So we've got lots and lots of data. The short answer is the different sheets that we use, whether you open Stripe checkout in an external browser, internet browser, or using our new payment sheet that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, all those provide really good options and the data looks pretty good. So you're going to see an initial dip in your initial conversion rate, but the trial to paid and retention data looks really solid. And what that results in is the same or maybe slightly fewer paying users, but a higher net proceeds per user. So we've got, we'll talk about this more just a little bit when we get to app to web, but we've got a bunch of data there. Um, and we'll continue to post more about this. But yeah, overall, I think it's worth everyone trying to run an experiment if if revenue is your primary goal. If your primary goal right now is trying to increase the volume of users starting a trial, then app to web probably isn't the best option for you. But if revenue is, it's a really good option. And one quick note here, Nicholas, I'm not sure if you're part of the Apple Small Business Program, but if you are and Apple's only taking 15% of your revenue, app to web is kind of break even. It doesn't really have the same benefits. But if Apple's taking 30%, app to web is a much better option for you. So, small business program, keep using in-app purchase. If you're not part of the small business program, give app to web a try. Cool. All right, let's keep going. So those are the growth trends. We're going to talk about things that we shipped and the product changes that we made this year. Now, one quick disclaimer, we shipped a ton of things. There are hundreds of iterations and tweaks and features that we don't even have time to cover, but they're made with love by our Superwall team. Jordan's contributed, um, uh, our whole engineering team, everyone's powering through a lot of stuff. So there's so many things that we can't talk about, but big shout out to the team. They've submitted a ton of stuff this year, and we're really stoked about the things that we've shipped. So first thing, app to web, web to app, and web checkout. So it's been a marathon this year, man. Early spring, we launched this web to app beta, and then everything in our short-term roadmap got thrown out the window because the Apple court ruling happened like late April. I think it was like April 30th. It actually happened. So we quickly shipped app to web with Stripe checkout using an external browser or an app browser. And then after that, something kind of awesome happened. Stripe saw that a lot of conversions were coming from Superwall in the mobile, from Stripe checkout on mobile. And so they asked us to provide some input on improving their UX. And so the UX that we have, that you see here in some of our other content, shows a much more sleek, modern, minimalist UX for Stripe checkout that doesn't have any field forms until users actually need them. So the things that scare users away from converting are gone, and what you have is a vastly improved mobile checkout UI. We also added integration with Paddle this year. So for customers who want a full merchant of record to be able to handle taxes, refunds, chargebacks, and all the benefits that you get with the merchant record, Paddle is now integrated, which is awesome. Um, Shout out to the Paddle team. We've loved partnering with them this year, and we're going to keep doing that. And then we want to take things a step further because the UX for app to web still has a bunch of friction in it. So what we did is we introduced this Stripe payment sheet a few weeks ago, and that's what you'll see here on the right. So this is when you have a paywall, which is what's sitting behind and blur and grayed out a little bit, and you type a CTA, this payment sheet pops up and allows users to purchase directly from here within the app. So we've shipped it, and the performance looks really solid. if you looked at performance from normal app to web, your conversion rate might drop uh, in your initial conversion rate by about 27%. With this, it's much closer to like the 12% range. So the payment sheet does perform a lot better. It's only one more tap than users typically have and doesn't uh, take them into a whole new, into external browser or internet browser. So it's less disruptive and so it feels a little more natural. We also had transaction abandonment support for Stripe payment sheet. So you have that as well at your disposal. All right. Um, all right. I see one question from Xander. Good question. Why can't the actual paywall, or at least the payment buttons, be a web view so there's no extra click? So we're actually going to get to that. That'll be coming soon, but we weren't quite ready to ship that yet. There's some logic that needed to be that we just hashed out around Apple Pay detection on a device. That's sort of a prerequisite to getting there, but we'll eventually allow you to do that right from the paywall. All right. Any questions on app to web? Jordan, if there are, we'll come back to them, but I think we're good to carry on. Oh, I saw a hand raised.
Yeah, we got one on the Stripe payment sheet from Nicholas.
Oh, are you planning to replace the Stripe payment sheet with a native Apple Pay sheet in the future?
It,
Um,
it kind of ties into what you just
a
answered.
little bit, yeah. So we're actually rebuilding this using Stripe elements. So we're actually going to have change the UX again. So it's not going to look exactly like that. I think Apple would take a major issue if we just ripped off their UX one for one. Uh, so it will have, we don't want to deceive users. So we're basically taking what we have here and just making an even further optimized version of it. Uh, all right, let's keep going. We got a lot to cover. Editor updates. This is going to be a
And
huge
Nick, sorry,
section.
one
Oh,
clarification I want to make there. I think too, like Nicholas was saying, like you press the button and then in the native Apple Pay sheet just comes up, like when we buy stuff online
mm.
uh, with e-com transactions. So I'm not sure if that's something we're looking to support or is possible right
It
now. I don't
is
have the details
It is,
on how
and
that
we'll get
works.
there, but there's a lot of logic that you need in that button, including detecting if users Apple Pay enabled or not and having like fallbacks. We just haven't gotten around to it, but we'll get there.
Awesome. And Nick, if you have any follow up questions, Nicholas, sorry, feel free to just put them in the Q&A and we'll get to them.
All right. Let's talk about the editor. We had a lot of changes this year, including a bunch of new first class elements, like this one. This is the navigation. This allows you to create an entire user flow and even nested user flows within a single paywall. So this is the first foray into creating user flows and onboarding with Superwall that are allow you to create all kinds of new ways to use Superwall that may use a paywall at the end, may not. But in particular, onboarding is a big pain point for app developers. It's historically really hard to run A/B tests on. There's a lot of complexity, and this allows you to start building whole new flows using just a paywall using remote config with Superwall that uh, lets you A/B test your onboarding flows, going from 5 pages to 12 pages, maybe 27 pages in some cases, all the way down to testing different arrangement of what you ask, where your questionnaire sits, where other permissions sit. Um, it allows you to really flexibly test those things. So the navigation element's been huge. It also allows to create things like multi-page paywalls and other options too. Cool. So that's the first thing. This navigation element was big this year. Slides was also big. We made a first class element that allows you to really quickly create a very nice looking carousel um, using imagery and text and having uh, the progress icons or the indicators that automatically adapt. Isn't pretty smooth since we created this, and I'm actually personally a big fan of using this on paywalls where you show a screenshot of the product and then a benefit copy linked to it where you're showing this where you're telling user what the benefit is and then attaching the actual UI of the app so that when a user progresses through onboarding, they actually see what those UIs are and validate the expectations that you set onboarding. So making this has been huge for developers this year. Cool. We also had drawer modals that you to very quickly create exit offers, or maybe you present an annual plan in onboarding uh, first on the paywall, and then if users tap X, you show a weekly plan or a monthly plan instead. So it allows you to layer the way that you introduce plans to users quickly and create different types of exit offers for customers. Cool. All right. I want to talk about the navigation element for a second. So before we move on to other things that we've added, I think this is really cool, and I want to spend a few minutes talking about what's possible with this kind of paywall. So I'm going to switch to sharing something else here. All right. So this is a multi-page paywall, but it's not just multi-page paywall, it's a whole onboarding flow. And so what I've built here is a navigation element with 3 pages, and they're pretty basic. I've got page one, page two, and page three. And when I get to page three, I'm going to show you something else that's in there that's really cool. So page one, very clear introduction, paywall. When I go to page two, I can have a carousel that shows different options. You might have some imagery attached here. So page two is a paywall, or page two is has a carousel embedded within it. And then when I reach the end of it, I then progress on to page three. So page three now has some cool elements. So just so it's clear what I did there, I had first page, a second page, and when I reached the end of my carousel at the last page, it automatically progressed me to page three. Now, page three's got some interesting options because this is where we start our questionnaire in this onboarding flow, which has become very popular and has a lot of benefits. So in this case, we're going to ask, what's your main growth goal? Grow subscriptions, increase revenue per user, learn what paywalls convert best, or I want to automate my pricing and A/B testing. Excuse me. So if I select one, I select it, and then it automatically progressively me to the next page. But you'll notice this one is tailored based on what I selected in page one. So what we've done is we've actually added logic where based on what I've selected in page one, I'm either going to move to page two, three, four, or five based on that. So if select the second option, I see a different page. And now I'm on page three. So we've added the ability for you to not only have these flows, but also create these selectors, and based on them changes the logic of what page I end up on next. So you can really personalize the experience for users. So let's say I end up on page five. Cool. I'm going to continue and I move to the next question. Who are you building paywalls for? Just my app, my product team, my company's portfolio, or multiple apps or clients? If I'm going to say, like, let's say I'm indie dev, I'm going to say just my app. Cool. And again, I've landed here on page seven that is tailored to the response that I just gave. So then I want to say, what challenges do we want to avoid? Well, I'm right now guessing at what converts. So I'm going to select that. And you can see this is actually a multi-select. So I can choose a couple different options or all the above. And you'll see when I select that, the other options go away. So we're going to continue on. The data can be deceiving. The truth is less pretty. So we've got some content in here to help present the problem to user before we start to communicate how we're going to actually solve that problem for them. So I like this screen a lot. Do you have any preferences? So a no-code payable builder. And one thing you'll notice is the CTA didn't light up until I selected my first option. So now I'm going to continue. Again, the CTA is darkened and I can't, or it's a little opaque and I can't really see it until I actually select something. So I'm going to build payables visually. That's my growth preference here. And now what best describes my role? I'm a founder and CTO because or CEO because I'm an indie developer. How do you hear about this particular app? Social media. Cool. And now I've got a social proof screen. It's become very popular. Put this right at the end of your survey. I'm going to continue. One thing you'll notice is as I've gone through this flow, this progress bar continues to increase. Uh, All right. And so I've got this 100% transparent and data-driven screen. So we're going to present one more thing to the user that helps validate that we're going to solve the problem here. And then we've got this state where we're personalizing everything in the experience for the user. And now we're all set. So here I've reached the end of my screen. We've said here's what you're going to be able to get out of Superwall. And when I continue from here, I'll progress on to my paywall itself. So this is obviously, we've adjusted the copy, but this is an example of what you can build right now, the navigation flow or the navigation element that allows you to start building really complex flows and really start to A/B test your whole onboarding flow.
All
Cool.
right, Nick, I think this is a good time to hit both of Daniel's questions at once, and then I can also provide a technical answer to his top one.
Cool. All right. Are there event loggings for the different pages on the onboarding and actions within the pages? So right now, yes, you can do that and you can set that manually. So let's go back to within the questionnaire. Let's go to page one. So what we can do here is you can see, oh, sorry. Page one, I've got this element and I've got this I'm setting a state here and I'm going to set my index, my page index to one. What we can also do is add what's called a custom placement. And I can just name this whatever I want. And when this gets sent, when I add this here, um, those get sent as custom analytic events to your third-party tool. So Jordan, you can link the docs for that. So you can set those manually here. In the future, we're going to be able to automatically tag this and we're going to provide some funnel analytics for you too. So right now it's kind of manual to set up. We know it's not ideal, but that's why we're going to fix it. So cool. And
And then his
then Daniel,
question, yeah, you're on it, Nick. Sorry.
oh man, text input. Uh, Yeah, I'm gonna this we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but that's coming. So we actually have someone working on this this very week to start building our text entry fields. We've got like a bit of a MVP to prove that it was feasible, but yeah, that'll be actually coming as a full-fledged first class feature in very early Q1. Cool. All right. All right.
We could, yeah,
Nicholas
go
asked
ahead.
one particularly important here. How does syncing with the database work with the onboarding flow? If is progress saved if the session is restarted? So not yet. No, we don't have progress set here. Um, Ideally, you would want a way like what ideally that we would like to do is for you to be able to set like uh trigger your placement and then set a parameter on that placement for where the user last left off, and then be able to automatically move a user to that step in the flow. Right now, we don't have the ability to do that, but that's something that we're going to build. So not there yet, but it will happen. And I guess this is sort of also begs the question of how frequently do users abandon your flow right now, where your drop-offs are to be able to track that. So what I've seen some app developers do is they'll create a paywall where like an onboarding flow like this, where I've got page one and page two, and then on page three, I might have another onboarding flow that's just page three and beyond. And if it's their first time seeing a paywall, they're going to show the entire flow. And if it's the second time seeing the paywall, I'll show just the questionnaire part. So that I'm at least starting at that section where it's a little more contextual to where I just left off. All right.
And then Sam has
Um,
one more related to onboarding, and Xander has one that's more about web checkout clarification.
right. So Xander, we'll come back to web checkout at the end. Sam, your question is about is there a way to see aggregate data on responses similar to what you can see with surveys? Would there be a way to see drop off between steps? So right now, that's pretty manual. So that's the thing I just mentioned here with adding custom placements, and that was an analytic events to like amplitude or mixed panel or post hog where you can track that. Um, so right now you can set that up manually to see what the responses they give you and start to uh, create those charts yourself in those tools. In Q1, we're going to build out. one, funnel analytics to see where your drop off is. So we're going to automatically tag those steps in this flow. So every page gets its own event, and we're going to be able to show you like how that where the drop off is in that flow. And then in terms of seeing the data on responses, we're going to save that, but we're going to also allow you to set a destination for that data too. So we'll be able to set that on the user object as a user property, and then also be able to send that to your third-party tool so you can start to aggregate your data and see how users perform when they respond uh, certain ways to your surveys.
And for the technical details on that, I put the link to the docs in the. If you go to the answered in the Q&A, Daniel's question from 11:22 a.m. My answer there has the documentation, and you can toggle between any of our SDKs for that as well.
Cool. And Nicholas asked one last question on this. Is a grand idea for this to replace the entire onboarding with Superwall placement or to determine which paywall is ideal to use after the onboarding? So you can already determine which paywall is ideal at the end of onboarding. This is more about A/B testing your onboarding flow. If I'm going to go from 5 screens to 12 screens because I want to add some more personalization to it, that's really hard to A/B test right now if you're actually coding things in Swift or Kotlin or React. It's complicated, it's messy. Setting up the tool and the analytics and the experiment is really hard, and it requires an app update every single time you want to test this. And that's messy. Most developers who are running at scale don't have time to do that. It's a lot to commit to. So the idea is that this is a way for you to streamline that process. Now, if you notice that we didn't ask things for like user auth or um, any of the native permission prompts that you might want to ask, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So put a pin note or a pin in that and we'll come back to it. Cool. All right. So I'm going to go back here and we're going to continue on with our with content for today. Cool. All right. So few more things that we released that are particularly important that you guys should know about in the editor. We've got AI localization. So this is big. I don't know if you guys know this, but you can get all your content on your paywall localized for free with Superwall using our AI tool. You simply add a language and then click a button that says AI localize, and it will translate it for you using OpenAI APIs. But one thing that's actually cool about this is you can continue to provide formatting and setting guides. So you can provide your style guide that says use formal French or informal Spanish. And that all gets put in the prompt that we feed to OpenAI to be able to pull back translations that are actually appropriate for your app. Um, so couple cool ways to use this. You can also export a CSV, modify it, and upload a CSV if you don't want to use our AI tools. Some developers want very precise localization or they pay someone to do it for them. So those options are available too, but the AI localization is super fast, super easy, and bypasses a lot of the headache of doing translations, especially if you have 7, 8, 12 languages that you support. Cool. All right, let's continue. Something that kind of went under the radar this year that I feel like people are not using enough is this rating request prompt. And in particular, I think there's a lot of ways to use this, not just with the onboarding flow that I mentioned, where you can request a review in the middle of your onboarding flow or at the end of your onboarding flow, but you can prop up an interstitial or a drawer that just asks for a rating at any point you want. It doesn't have to be a paywall or it doesn't have to be a placement that you would use a paywall. You can send any kind of placement whenever and be able to ask for an App Store rating. So this is awesome. It's a tap behavior that's automatically available to everyone if you're using, I think 4.7 to start getting included. So if you're using an SDK on that version or beyond, it's available to you. Cool. All right, and here's what pairs nicely with that or this or a lot of other types of messaging. So, um, oh, actually, we got one question from Sam about these rating requests. So, any learnings about how to successfully ask for ratings in onboarding? Um, it seems like a basic or a big new recent trend. Um, I don't know how recent it is, but I think it should become people talk about it more now. Asking for a rating at the end of onboarding or somewhere in onboarding has become really popular. One, because you get a lot of five-star reviews, but two, the volume increases dramatically. Um, so Apple has created a system with App Store ratings that influences your ASO rankings that isn't doesn't actually represent the quality of the user experience, which is weird to say, but that's the way Apple's engineered it, and they haven't touched this in over 10 years. So the as a developer, you're incentivized to ask for as many reviews as early as possible because you're going to see an increase in five-star and the volume you go up, which will help your ASO rankings and further drive the flywheel for growth. Because Apple's created a system, it actually is been in your interest to play the game. So because of that, it makes sense to keep following this trend and do it because it will help your app, it'll help app store rankings, and your competitors are likely doing it as well. So it's a trend that I would hop on. It's not something that you should like the idealized world of what Apple created this for just isn't the reality for the way that the system is actually set up. So um, asking onboarding is my suggestion, and in particular at the middle end of onboarding. Cool. All right. So we've got this pop-up presentation style that we added a few weeks ago that I think is awesome. One, it's a very quick way to present things over top of an existing experience. We know that users get anxiety if you take them away from what they're currently in the middle of. So in particular for your in-app paywalls, where you're trying to present a paywall at a point when users in the middle of an experience, like let's say it's like a photo editing app where you can remove the background of an image, and I go through and I get all the way to the point where my background's been removed, you could present a paywall there without a user losing their place. Reduces their anxiety and they're more likely to convert. So you can also use this for lots of different other options. So for example, in-app messaging or educational messaging or a what's new in this recent app update. So you can start to use these messages or these type of pop-up paywalls, not to necessarily convert users, but to educate them and increase the retention of your users that you do acquire. Um, in the last app I managed, we had a bunch of different educational messaging and we used a third-party tool that we had to pay for, but this just comes free with Superwall. You don't have to put a product in there. You don't have to charge a user for it. You can have a CTA just dismiss the paywall. All of that is possible unless you improve your retention and for these customers without having to do any sort of monetization effort. What that means is you should also start sending more placements where you would never want to present a paywall there, but you can use as an educational message trigger. All right, let's keep going. One thing that was added that has been a huge quality of life addition to the editor this year is this copy and paste dynamic rule set. So some of the paywalls that I create have pretty complex rules. This is a pretty simple one where I'm basically changing the copy based on trial eligibility for a user. But you can copy and paste these in when you want to create different rules or use the same rule set in multiple places to either change an image and copy and maybe price in some other part of it. And you can copy and paste these, makes it super fast. Shout out to Christo for building this. He's on he's our design engineer. It's been a huge quality of life improvement. All right. So before I get to campaign updates, any other questions on uh, any editor changes that we made this year or different presentation styles? All right, let's keep going. We got a lot to cover here. One thing we added this year in the version 4.0 and up of our SDK was this entitlement feature, where you can specify filtering for users who are either matched either with active or inactive states of a particular entitlement. So if Pro is active, I can present an opportunity for them to upgrade to Platinum as long as Pro is active and Platinum is inactive. So things for like upgrades, cross grades, downgrades, this is a really easy way to target these users. But then we add something else with these subscription status filters. So we add the ability to target users who have auto renew disabled. They're in an active trial, but they've canceled, so auto renew is disabled, but they're not yet expired. They have an active subscription and they've canceled but not yet expired, or they're actually fully expired. So you can actually go through and target users for winbacks this way. And we're going to talk about some other cool winback features coming. But this is like the first prerequisite to be able to do some more targeting and get granular on trying to convert users or save people who are canceled but yet not yet expired. Cool. All right. We also had a bunch of new filters for ways to target users in new kinds of ways. Um, so, for example, we have this storefront country code, which actually targets the user based on the country they have registered with their App Store app. That's particularly useful for things like app to web and other ways where you might want to specify pricing for specific countries. We have this other one called Is Apple Pay Available, which again is really applicable for app to web, but it detects if the user has Apple Pay enabled on their device and they have a card linked to their Apple Pay. So it's helpful for making sure that you're sending users and reducing the amount of friction that you show for your app to web flows only to users who have like a one-click payment method. We also add this total review requests. So going back to that review prompt, you can target users and make sure that you're only showing it to users who have a certain review request, um, a certain number of review requests, so you're not spamming them. We add device tier on Android this year. This is particularly awesome because it lets you target users by the device quality. So it's not necessarily um, like there's hundreds of Android devices, like hundreds. Apple releases what, maybe 12 per year of iPhone and iPad devices that you could target, whereas in Android, there's hundreds. And so we basically built a system, shout out to Ian for our Android SDK engineer for doing this. He built a system that lets you target users based on the attributes of the device, like the camera quality, the size of the screen, and other features. So that lets you group devices into low end, mid tier, high end, and then ultra high devices, so you can do better targeting of users. Um, and then lastly, we add these occurrence-based filters, which are one of my personal favorite additions, where I can start to target users based on different behaviors that they do in the app. So I can wait until I can wait to show a very specific, very targeted paywall to users who've had a certain number of interactions with a feature where I don't want to gate that right away. I'm gonna let the user use it, and then on the third use, let's say, I'm gonna now present a paywall to them to try and convert them because I've seen that they've already engaged with that feature enough. So these occurrence-based filters are really handy for making sure you're targeting users who are engaged or had a certain number of interactions with this specific feature. Cool. All right, let's talk about charts. So we get a bunch of new revenue charts this year. ARPU, MRR, ARR, and realized LTV. I'm realizing I messed up and have one wrong image here. That first one should be ARR. But we release these new revenue charts for you, and they're super helpful. Not only that, we make them free. So this just comes with having a Superwall account, and if you're on the free plan, up to 10,000 conversions a month, these all come free. And we also have lots of new filters and breakdowns, including custom user properties and device properties that lets you segment and understand how your users are behaving in converting at a really granular level. And particularly if you are asking things like age or other things in onboarding. Cool. We also added Android revenue tracking. This has been coming for way too long. I think when I started at Superwall in March of 2024, this is something we were already talking about and knew we were going to get to, but we want to get entitlements out and we knew that this is a part of that. So Android, you can now track your revenue. You can go through the setup here and actually see all the same level of revenue data that you would see in iOS in your campaign results now on Android. Lets you make really uh, really accurate decisions about what paywalls are actually performing best. Cool. All right. Webhooks. We launched a bunch of integrations this year. Not only that, we have a bunch of integrations that are still coming. So if there is an integration that you want, go to this page. It's called integrations in the dashboard. And then if you see one that you want, tell us that you want it. Help us figure out what to prioritize for you. We want to make sure these integrations meet the needs of all our users, but we got to figure out what to build first. And so your feedback is really appreciated. So you can do that right on the integrations page. Cool. All right. And then here's a big one, refund protection. And we have a refund rate chart uh, in our charts feature that lets you track uh, track and then also to tell Apple how you want refunds to be handled. So you can choose uh, not to handle a refund request, ask Apple to grant all refunds, decline, or submit data and let Apple decide how it should be handled. Um, all of this can be used to protect your conversion data to make sure that you're retaining as much as possible, but also respecting your users. All right, cool. Team roles and permissions was also a long time coming. We added this year. It gives you the ability to set specific controls. So you can add like a designer or a collaborator and set the specific role type for that user in your app project settings. One quick note here, there are a couple other things coming. We've heard feedback from users that they want someone to be only able to edit a paywall. So they want a specific type of editor role. That'll be coming. We just haven't gotten there yet, but it's definitely going to come where you can set an editor role so you can invite someone who's like a paywall designer, contractor into your project without them being able to see a bunch of data and can or be able to edit campaigns. Cool. All right. Those are all the tools in the dashboard that are the major updates. I want to take a moment to talk about a couple things that were added this year that fall outside of the dashboard, but are still really helpful and useful for you. One, we made a major docs overhaul. Shout out to Duncan for this. So we completely reoriented docs to function like a reference guide. So it's very simple to use now, very straightforward. We also have the Ask AI feature, which has been around for a while, but I think it's super underrated. We're going to actually ask AI, uh, the AI tool in the docs to basically um, handle a bunch of things for you. So if I want to say like, give me the liquid code I need to be able to set up a timer that ends on this day, the AI will actually just build it for you, and you can drop that right into your paywall. And then along with that, we also build an MCP server to connect directly with your favorite IDE that you're using. And when you do this, it makes the integration with Superwall super seamless. Cool. Again, shout out to Duncan, one of our support engineers who worked on this a lot this year. All right, paywallexperience.com. This is awesome. I don't know if anybody had like, feel free to raise a hand in here if you actually use this year, but you can take a screenshot of a paywall or your current paywalls and then ask this tool to improve the conversion rate, and it'll provide you a bunch of suggestions. It's really fast, really easy, and it's based on a ton of experiments that we've used. The entire, see, Jordan, do you remember how big the whole token context window is for this? It's
Oh
pretty,
man, it's in the blog post I wrote. I think it's like over 128K. It's
yeah,
huge.
it's huge. We pour a lot of context data into this to make sure we're providing you really high quality answers on what to improve on your paywall. So, and this one goes out to Jordan, who built our Superwall mobile app. This shipped a while ago, but it's improved a lot during the last year. So we've got a lot of, not only can you view like all your data, but you can preview paywalls, which is super helpful, and also make some changes to your campaigns really quickly. And one of my personal favorite things is all the widgets that you can add. So you can have all this data on your phone without having to actually go into the app. And then shout out to Joseph. He created our Superwall podcast this year, and it's gone really well. There's a lot of, I mean, the value that you get from the data in here is, or the info is incredible. So many of these app devs are making lots of money, growing lots of apps, and they have lots of ideas and suggestions for you. So check out the Superwall podcast. It's on YouTube and coming soon to all the other podcast platforms. All right. That was a marathon, but we have one last update. Pricing. So we made a change this year to align prices more around your incentives. So we've got a few different tiers, but one thing in particular is you'll see in there a term called MAR, and that's monthly attributed revenue. So we only track revenue in that 1% of revenue from users that gets acquired through a Superwall paywall. So if you come over from another tool or your native users, you never pay Superwall for any of the users that you acquire outside of our platform. If you acquire them from the last 2 years and you just to Superwall, we're never going to charge you for those users. They're yours. You acquire them yourself. We only want to align with or charge you when Superwall is actually active in the process of acquiring your customer. So, um, new pricing, it's super flexible and only charges you when you actually make money. All right. Same as the question. Does it include renewals too? Yes, it does. But again, only attributed revenue. So the user has to be acquired through Superwall. And if you're on the old pricing model and want to stick with it, that's fine. Keep using it. But for all the new customers coming over, this is our new pricing model. Yeah. All right. Let's keep going. Before I get to what's coming in Q1, Q2 next year, a couple of quick things. We've had a lot of changes in the Super Bowl team. So we started the year with 10 team members. We're leaving with 17. So we've got a lot more people around to help support and improve the product. But in particular, we just recently hired Armin. He's another support engineer who works EU hours. So we're bumping up support on the technical side, and he'll be working a lot in Discord as he learns Superwall and learns how to use to provide the best updates for you guys. So um, the team is growing, and we're able to provide more and more support to you, which I know everyone's wanting more of. All right, cool. So here's our product preview for what's coming in Q1, Q2. And let's talk about onboarding because I previewed what you can do already. Let's talk about what you can actually get coming up. A lot. So we are going to add a new multi-select and single select survey elements. So the ones that I demoed today, they're built. There's a lot of customization that we did. And unless you're taking that directly from a template that we provide, it's a little bit messy. So we're creating new first class elements that'll function similar to the way the navigation element functions as a first class element. Text entry fields, we talked about that. We're also going to add native permission prompts, things like push permission, ATT, contact location, Apple Health. We're going to start with push permission and ATT as the most popular ones, but this is an extension of what we've already added with the native review prompt. We already talked about custom conversion events and then the ability to automatically track funnel analytics to see where those are dropping, where users drop off in the flow. We're actually adding this thing that I'm pretty stoked about that is under the hood, but it's a new way to improve asset loading performance in a pretty drastic way. So we'll have more details on that coming up, but that's going to be big. Um, we're going to have a canvas builder view. Like if you saw the demo that I provided today, you can see one screen at a time. I want to see all my screens in one view. So we're going to provide a canvas view for you to be able to see everything at once to view your flow linearly the same way that you would view that in Figma. And then a couple other data related things, be able to set a user data that they submit as a user attribute on the user object, and then set a destination for your onboarding user data. Right now it's pretty custom to set that up, and you'll be able to do that much more easily going forward. Cool. So those are the onboarding features coming. We're going to start with the multi-select, single select, and text entry. And like I mentioned, push and ATT permissions will be next. So some of these will start coming out towards the end of December and very early Q1, and then we'll continue to push these out as time goes on. All right. Here's what I'm particularly stoked about. iOS introductory offer overrides. So promotional offers and win back offers are messy. They're very prone to bugs. And when users aren't given the right offer or they go to purchase a specific offer they see on the paywall and it doesn't work, they get really upset. What if you could simplify that whole flow? So all you have to do is say this user should automatically get another offer. So this is what it does. So we're going to provide you the ability to give users another intro offer, even if that product is in the same subscription group they're already subscribed to or were previously subscribed to, using either a trial, a pay upfront, or a pay-as-you-go offer without all the messiness. So what you'll do is you'll create your audience using some of those filters I talked about, like for example, an expired entitlement, and be able to pair that with with this feature here, where you can set the eligibility for this intro offer. So I can create a paywall specifically for win backs and reactivations and override their eligibility to make users who are fitting into that audience always eligible to receive another introductory offer, whether that's that same introductory offer or an offer on a different product in that same subscription group. So it's going to be awesome for being able to create ways to win back customers without all the messiness of uh, web signatures and other things that Apple's created that make promotional offers pretty messy to use. All right. We're going to create parity on app2web with the current iOS monetization uh, options that you have. So in particular, paid intro offers, win back discount offers, and offer codes that you can use with your Stripe setup. So you'll be able to use those the same way that you currently use them with in-app iOS in-app purchases now. Cool. Let's talk about demand scores. This is a feature that I'm excited about because it's an analysis that we've created using an AI model that allows you to ask all kinds of new questions. So we're able to present users with this demand score from 0 to 99 and start to form entirely new hypotheses like, should I show different prices to different users? Should I default to my premium tier for high demand score and my lower tier for low demand score users? Should I show a different exit offer to them, to different segments? So uh, being able to see this allows you to ask all kinds of new questions that you wouldn't have known to ask before. So in this example, you can see the chart. In this particular app, they're converting well in the high end, but they've got this big curve in the middle of low demand score users. So they can provide a whole new way to target users, um, to target offers to those users specifically. All right. And then the long-awaited Figma to Superwall plugin. It's coming. We're currently pending Figma approval for this, but we submitted it like a couple weeks ago, and we're just going through the process to get them to give us thumbs up that it's good to use and it can be available to everyone. One quick note, this is used with Figma auto layout, so you will need to use auto layout on your paywall. But from all the feedback I've gotten so far, like 90% of people already have their designs set up with auto layout already. Cool. All right. And then a bunch of new charts are coming this year, including retention and churn charts, proceeds per user. This will probably be more like early Q2 when we get to these. But we're going to have a bunch of these new ones, including install to conversion or install to paid user charts, and also subscriber movement charts. So whole new ways to view and analyze your users on the retention side of things. Cool. And then Apple Retention Messaging API support experiments. This was Apple shipped this update for users to be able to send a specific offer to a user um, at the point where they're canceling in the App Store app or managing their Apple ID subscriptions. So we're going to provide ability to not only control that messaging and the offer that you provide to users, but also the ability to run experiments as well. So that'll probably be coming like later Q2, um, unless we have some extra bandwidth, or there's a good chance we hire another support engineer or another engineer who joins the team, and then we'll be able to start moving this a little bit faster. All right, cool. I presented a lot of stuff, and it's 1 o'clock already. Can't believe it went that fast, but I'm gonna hang around here for a few minutes and be able to answer all the questions.
Why don't we start with Xander's here?
Xander, hey, okay. On the manage page, the app.superwall.app/manage, some users are inputting their email associated with their app, not with a Stripe email, use at checkout. And they're not able to figure out how to manage the subscription. Is there a way to make this copy more clear they should be inputting their email use at checkout? That's a good question. Um, we'll look into that a little bit more. That checkout flow, or the management, is Stripe's own management. That's not like a custom UX that we built. Um, so I don't know if we were able to adjust the copy on there, but you can certainly adjust that in your app before you link out. Um, Jordan, any other suggestions that you have?
You read my mind on the copy right before they link out. I would maybe put that in bold typography or something. I mean, it may not be sexy, but it helps avoid the issue for now. Because yeah, once that manage page and flow kicks in, you're right that Stripe's in control at that point. I don't know. There may be some sort of configuration or something on Stripe that you could change. I'm not aware of one off the
Hmm.
top of my head, but also I haven't you know gone too deep into Stripe myself with what all you can tweak. Um, yeah, I
Hmm.
was also wondering if webhooks could help here to like fire off an email to them if you could detect that happened. But yeah, I think messaging before the point of checkout is the quick answer.
Cool.
And no worries, Xander. I saw your other comment. I knew that
Is
wasn't a
it?
Xander Klein comment. Come on now. I know you well enough by
Come
now.
on, man. You don't need to throw your co-founder in the bus. All right. Nicholas, you got another question here. Love seeing improved subscription management page that can be embedded in-app, especially for web subscriptions. Yeah, that would be nice. We we haven't prioritized that because it hasn't become. We have other things that we believe and have feedback on that are higher priority. I think we want to add like a consumer or a like customer subscription management section that you can embed in your app. But that is, I'll say this, Nicholas, like you keep advocating for it, and then if other customers keep advocating for it, we're going to build it. But right now, it's just not as high a priority as some of the other things that we're building. Um, but we know that it's something that we'll eventually get to. It just hasn't become super important for us yet. That said, a couple options for you. One, you can open that Stripe management right from through like an in-app browser. That would allow it to feel embedded in the app without taking the user out of it. That said, it also might be just as useful to have that link out to an external browser. Um, the UX that you appreciate is a little bit nuanced there, but feel free to play around with that. Um, yeah, thanks for the question, Nicholas. I appreciate the feedback as always. All right, everyone, we're at time here. Any other questions before we part ways for today? All right. With that, I'm Nick again. Jordan here. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Have a good one, everybody.